Okay, so in this example, right, I'll be using this piece of footage here, as I was mentioning earlier. Now, if any one of you are using this footage, the footage that starts with the 8K, right, and the versus the footage that start with M16. Now, M16, right, are footages which I shot using the raw mode on my camera settings. So the quality of the videos, right, that start with M16, right, or M16, right, the quality will be much, much better. Okay, but those that start with 8K will have some compression artifacts. But that doesn't mean that you can't track the footage. You can still track these footages. Okay, but you will get better results, right, with this M16. Those that start with M16, because the resolution will be much higher. All right, so I'm going to copy this file over. And I'm going to go through the entire process so that you guys can follow along. I'm going to create a new project folder for this. Okay, I'm going to call this Nodal upper block. Okay, because I shot this at the upper block level, I'm going to create a new folder to store the video. Okay, again, always organize your shots. And then I'm going to create a new folder for the sequence. So img seq, so image sequence. And same thing, I'm going to use Blender to do the conversion. I'm going to drag the footage in. And also, I want to point out something about the footage. Now, you don't have to use the entire sequence, because I know a lot of students, right, will track. They don't care whether the footage, right, is the beginning or the ending. They'll track from beginning all the way to the end. Now, you just look at the footage here. Now, from frame 1 until to about frame 35, there's hardly any movement. So if you don't see any movement here, you can trim this away. You don't need to track these, all right? Okay, you can click and drag the ends of this header, and then, okay, for this, right, there's a lot of possibilities. You can animate a spaceship or a helicopter taking off from the car park roof, and then have it fly away. Okay, maybe fly away, or just have a little bit more, a few more seconds at the end, and then I'll trim the length by clicking on this handle, and then bringing it back. Okay, so clicking on the center of this clip, right, you can drag it until it reaches frame 1. So now, I only have about, how many frames to deal with? I only have about 122 frames. Okay, so I can end my clip here at 122. Well, actually, I want to end it at 121. Okay, the last frame is this one. Okay, because 122 is 0. All right, so now I've trimmed my shot. Okay, then I can export this into an image sequence. So before I do that, the usual settings, make sure your colors management is set to standard. All right, and then your output, make sure you output it to the correct folder. So in this case, I'm outputting it to my project folder, image sequence folder. So give it a name. I call this Nodal upper block. Then underscore. Then accept. I'm going to use the default PNG settings. That should work. And then hit render. File. Under render animation. So right now I'm converting these into an image sequence. So you can see that the quality of these footages that is shot on raw mode on my Canon 5D. Okay, this is shot on the Canon 5D Mark III. So this is a full frame sensor camera. And when I shot this, right, the camera is actually mounted on the monopod. Okay, a monopod is, it's just it's not really, it's not a tripod. Tripod means 3 legs. A monopod means that this pole only has 1 leg. Okay, but it has a camera mount that allows me to do all these smooth panning shots. Okay, so once I've done this, I'll be tracking this shot inside Blender. Okay, so now I've exported the shot. So I will go over to match moving. And then I'm going to open up the frames. Okay, click on the first frame. And because we already set the frame range, so everything should load up nicely. I'm going to click on prefetch. And now I want to show you why when you shoot with the raw footage, the tracking, right, will be, okay, that doesn't work all the time, but when you shoot with raw, that means the image quality is much better. Chances are your tracking will also be a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to track this now by using the detect features. So I'm going to turn on detect features. Then I'm going to press S, and then to scale up the features a little bit more. And then I'm just going to press Ctrl T to let it track forwards. Okay, I'm going to let this thing track as far as it can until all the features disappear. Right, and then now it tracks all the way to the end already. Now I press Control. I'm going to detect features again. Okay, and then this time I'm going to detect these features backwards all the way to the end. So let it track backwards. Okay, so now I got a good set of trackers, and if you look at the tracker bar here, everything has turned gray. So I can solve this. So go over to solve. Make sure I enable tripod. I'm not even going to enable refine. And then I'm just going to hit solve. I got a value of 2.19. Okay, remember for this kind of shots, right, for nodal shots, the error, right, will sometimes be slightly higher. So that's normal. Okay, if you want, you can put in a little, you can detect more features and try to solve it. Okay, for example, maybe I want to start from here. Then I'll hit detect features again. And then I'm going to play with the detect features threshold. You can increase or reduce this margin so that you will actually increase the amount of features that are being detected. All right. So I'm just going to play with this threshold. See, until to the point that it's even want to track the clouds. Okay, but you have to be very careful. If you track more points, sometimes it might introduce more errors. Okay, but I'm just going to try this after adjusting this value. And then I'm going to try tracking backwards again. Okay, and so far so good. All these points are staying place. They are not jumping all over the place. You can see that they are quite reliable, quite stable. Okay, there are some points that are moving up and down here. Okay, and we can do our solve and see what happens. Okay, if the solve is not improving, then okay, actually it actually got worse. All right, so I'm going to try to get rid of those points, right? Like these points, like jumping around, I'm going to delete away. You can click and delete all these points. I'm just clicking on them and deleting them. Okay, maybe this one. And okay, all these points are like they disappear. That's why they all end around the same height. So I'm going to try solving again. Okay, so it went down to 2.2 again. So I think I'm going to keep this value. So it's good enough. So now we're going to go to orientation. So remember, for nodal shots, right, your orientation, you can't really have a flaw. There is no flaw in a tripod shot or nodal shot. So I'm just going to click one point, which is over here at this car park point here. And then I'm going to set that as the origin. Okay, that's it. Then I'm going to reduce the scale because if you look over here, the scale still looks a bit big. So I'm going to select two random points next to each other and then apply a scale of 3 and then set scale. So everything will be smaller. Okay, then I can click on setup background and then set up tracking scene. Okay, so now if I play back the timeline, the plane, right, should stick on the floor fairly stably. All right. So, but if you are not happy with this orientation, for example, if I go to layout now, and if I look at through the camera, if you're not happy with this this orientation, previously I was telling you guys to parent the camera to a empty. and then rotate the empty. So I'm going to show you another method. I think this method is the probably the best method. You don't have to set up anything. You don't have to create anything. So the easiest way to rotate this to the view that you like is to first enable, go to the overlays, click on the drop down and turn on motion tracking so that you can see all the crosses. Okay, and then I'm going to click, you can click on any of the crosses because they are all linked to the camera. You see that once I click on the crosses, right, the camera is selected. Okay, so with this selected right now, you can press G, G to move, R to rotate. Okay, so if you want to rotate and it into, for example, the Z-axis. Z-axis is the Y-axis. If you look over here, Z-axis, that means I want to rotate along the Z-axis. If I press R followed by Z, I can rotate it to the angle that I want. You see that? So once I got this angle already, now I want to shift this along the Y-axis. So press G. G is to grab and move. G, Y. Then I can slide this in the Y-axis. Now if I want to push this back along the X-axis, you press G followed by X. Then you can pull back. Then now you can line it to wherever you want. So this is a much better way of lining up. Okay, so I can see here the lineup is still not very good. Now if you want the camera to pull further away, you can press G, then Z, Z. G, Z, Z. Z, if you press the Z twice, that means, right, you are moving the camera in the local view. So you can see this is very useful. Okay, so this area still looks a little bit out. So I'm going to press R followed by Z again. And then just rotate it until it matches the perspective. Then G followed by Y. Then G followed by X to slide it into position. Okay, so now I'm happy with the lineup. So what I want to do right now is to bring in some 3D items. Okay, you can also check your lineup later on. You can click on this corner here. Let's say I want to put a cone here because I know the cone is lined up on this corner. So select this this crosshair or this cloud point. Then to add a cone object, you can click on add here. Then mesh and then add a cone object. Okay, the cone object right now, it appears where this thing is, the cursor. Okay, I want this cone object to be here, located here. So how do I bring it here? First, you select this. Then you press Shift S. Shift S to bring the cursor to selected. So you can see now the red candy cane object is here. And we have the cone. So you can select the cone. You can click in the outliner, select the cone. Then you press Shift S, Shift plus S, selection to cursor. So now the cone will jump to the cursor. So this cursor is a very useful tool and unique only to Blender. Now I want to rotate the cone 180 degrees. So you press R, then you press X so that it rotates along the X-axis. Then press 180. Okay, then press G, G to move again. But you can press Z to lock it in the Z-axis. And then you press 1. Move it up 1 unit. Okay, because the center of this cone is actually 2 units. Okay, so I press 1. So right now, the cone is pointing directly at the point here. So you can scrub the timeline. You notice that everything still stays in place. All right. Okay, now I want to show you something unique about the nodal tracking. If I go over to the 3D view right now, okay, we go to the 3D view. This is what I mean about nodal. You look at all the track points. They form the inside of something like a ball. Okay, Baha, I was explaining to you about this the other day, right? Okay, notice the inside, right? It looks like the shell of the ball. So all the points, right, are actually located like the inside of a ball. Because if you look at the animation of the camera, it is only rotating. That's why this is a nodal shot. Okay, by now you all should already know what this nodal shot is all about. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my camera view again. And right now, I can export this into, export it as a Alembic file and then bring it into Fusion or I can also bring it into Maya. So let's try bringing it into Fusion. All right. So File, Export, Alembic, and then I'm going to put it in my project folder so that I can locate everything easily. Let's see, where is it? Here it is. Okay, I'm going to put it here. Call this Nodal upper block, and then export. Then I'm going to fire up my Fusion. Okay, and then first we bring in the image sequence. Load the image sequence first. Okay, check our composition settings is correct at 25 frames per second. Frame format 25. Okay. Then we can import in our Alembic. Just bring it in. Then click OK. Everything is 25 frames per second. It's correct. Okay, and then we're going to look through what is the merge 3D scene like. Right mouse click on the symbol here. Look through the camera. And we only have about, how many frames is that? We only have 120 frames. So I'm going to reduce the range to 120. 120. All right. And you can see the camera movement has all the movement of the shot. Okay, so now I want to bring the background to the camera. So connect the background to the camera shape, the output to the camera shape, then we should see the background. And straight away you will notice there's a scaling problem. All right. So remember the number, just now I told you guys earlier on. You all still remember the number? No, 0.769. 0.769. So please remember this number. So we need to enter the 0.769. So you can see the cone, right? It's not lined up to the corner of the building. Right? You can see over here. In our blender, right? This cone, the tip of the cone, okay, the tip of the cone is lined up at the tip of this car park building, right? So to fix this, okay, first we select the camera shape, go over to the inspector, unlock the camera, then open up the film back. Then under the aperture height, you only need to change this value, 0.769. Then press enter. And now you can see the cone now is lined up. Okay, so you can scrub the timeline and see whether, yeah, actually it is. Okay, I don't need to adjust. Now, if your playback is not matching, right? Okay, I think it's not matching a little bit. Okay, you can see that. That means, right, we are probably 1 frame off. Okay, so if you are 1 frame off, you need to open up keyframes. Open up the keyframes. Then click on the loader. Then click on zoom to fit here, this button. And then you need to click on the nodal upper block sequence and push it up to the right 1 frame. And now our frames, right, should be lined up. And if you want to see this in 3D form, just right mouse click, go to 3D options and turn on lighting. Now, when turn on lighting, right, notice the background also changes. It becomes dark. So we need to click on the camera shape, go over to the background, the image plane, under the lighting, uncheck affected by lights. Okay, so I'm going to lock the camera back again. And then now I also want to hide this grid. So right mouse click, go to 3D options and hide the grid. Okay, and then we can see whether our cone is now lined up. And if you play back, you can see now the tip of the cone is now touching the tip of this block. All right. And okay, right now we are just waiting for this to load up to the memory. Okay, so this is the workflow for doing the nodal track. All right, so for Maya, it's quite straightforward. Maya, you just import it straight away. You shouldn't have to adjust the focal length or even the film back. All right. Okay, so remember this because for Blender, right, the best way to align is just to simply select, enable the overlay. Okay, click on the overlay motion tracking, and then you can just select this select any of the crosses, then the camera will be selected. And if you press R, you can rotate. You can press X to rotate in the X-axis, or Y to rotate in the Y-axis, or Z to rotate along the Z-axis. Okay, this will help you get the lineup to match. You can also press G, Y to slide, G, X to slide along the X-axis, G, Z to push it up or down. All right, so this is very useful. If you press G alone, you will move along the different axes. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video now.